Today, we're jumping into a really powerful idea from Morgan Housel's brilliant work. It's this. When it comes to money, your success has way less to do with how smart you are and pretty much everything to do with how you behave. So let's just start with a question that kind of flips the script on everything we're taught about finance, right? We're always told study the spreadsheets, master the math. But what if that's only half the battle? What if the real secret, the real advantage, is actually hidden inside our own minds? And that really gets to our first big idea here. We have this tendency to treat finance like it's a hard science, like it's governed by these strict, unbreakable rules. But in reality, it's a soft skill. It's driven by something way more messy and unpredictable: us. And here's where it gets really interesting. Think about it. In physics, the laws are universal. 1 plus 1 always equals 2. An engineer can tell you with absolute certainty why a bridge collapsed. But in economics, you could ask a room full of Nobel Prize-winning experts why the market crashed, and you'd get 10 different answers. And that's because we, human beings, are the crazy, unpredictable variable in the whole equation. This quote from Housel just nails it. You can know intellectually that you should invest for the long term, but that knowledge is completely useless if you panic and sell everything the second the market takes a nosedive. It's your behavior, not your brain power, that really drives your results. And that behavior is shaped by our very unique personal experiences. So this leads to this really fascinating and honestly deeply empathetic idea. When it comes to money, nobody is crazy. The decisions we make might look totally irrational to someone else, but they almost always make perfect logical sense to us based on our own personal history with money. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. Your actual first-hand experience with the massive global economy is like a tiny, tiny fraction of a percent of what's actually happening. And yet, that sliver of experience forms almost your entire financial worldview. We're all looking at the same world through completely different windows. For a perfect example, just look at the Great Depression. For most people, it was this traumatic scar that taught them lessons of fear, of scarcity, of saving every penny. But for a young John F. Kennedy, whose family's fortune actually grew during that time, his main memory was, well, that his dad just hired more gardeners. They lived through the exact same historical event, but they learned completely opposite lessons about what money is for. But our personal stories aren't just shaped by our upbringing. They're also massively, massively influenced by two forces we often like to ignore: luck and its identical twin, risk. Look, we all know Bill Gates is a genius, right? Nobody's arguing that. But even he admits he was also unbelievably lucky. The odds of a teenager in 1968 going to one of the only high schools in the world with a computer, it was literally 1 in a million. That single stroke of luck gave him a head start that almost no one else on the planet had. But, and this is so important, for every story of good luck, there's an equally powerful story of its opposite. Bill Gates had a close friend, Kent Evans. By all accounts, he was just as brilliant, just as obsessed with computers. But he was struck by his own 1 in a million event, a tragic mountaineering accident, and he never got to see their shared dream come to life. So what this really shows us is that we can't just credit all our successes to our own skill and then blame all our failures on bad luck. They're two sides of the very same coin. Every outcome in life is some blend of what we did and what just happened to us by chance. This brings us to a huge, huge distinction that most people completely miss. The skills that help you get rich are often the polar opposite of the skills that help you stay rich. Think about it. Getting rich usually requires a ton of optimism, a willingness to take big risks, to go for it. But staying wealthy? Oh, that's a whole different ballgame. That's about survival. It's about a little bit of paranoia and the humility to know that luck can turn on a dime and nothing is guaranteed. And if you want a perfect, if tragic, example of this, just look at the story of Jesse Livermore. He was an absolute master at the game of getting rich. I mean, he made the equivalent of $3 billion in a single day during the 1929 crash. But he could never switch his mindset from offense to defense. He just kept taking bigger and bigger risks until eventually his luck ran out and he lost it all. And that gets to what might be the most powerful idea in this whole thing. The hardest part of wealth isn't making it. It's knowing when to stop taking risks. It's the skill of having enough. Social comparison is a game you can never, ever win because someone will always have more. The only way to win is to decide for yourself where the finish line is. All right, so if taking huge risks is this kind of double-edged sword, then what's the most powerful tool for actually building wealth? Well, it's something we all have access to, but very few of us truly appreciate its power. It's time. Yeah, we all look at Warren Buffett and we see this investing legend, and he absolutely is. But his real superpower, his secret weapon, isn't just picking stocks. It's that he started investing when he was a little kid, and he just never stopped. He's been doing it consistently for nearly 80 years. Now, just look at this slide. This is absolutely stunning. The vast majority of his fortune wasn't earned during his prime working years. It was generated after he qualified for Social Security. That right there is the mind-bending, almost magical power of compounding. The results are always loaded at the back end. And here's a brilliant way to think about it. You know how ice ages happen? It's not because winters got dramatically colder. It's because the summers were just a little bit cooler, not quite warm enough to melt the previous winter's ice. So it just builds up, layer by layer, over thousands of years. Wealth is built the same way. It's not about the home runs. It's about letting your small gains stack up, uninterrupted for decades. So when you boil it all down, it leads to a pretty simple truth. Good investing isn't about chasing the absolute highest returns, because that usually involves taking crazy, unsustainable risks. The real goal is to earn pretty good returns that you can stick with for the longest possible time. And that brings us right back to the beginning, to our final question. And maybe the most important one of all. We've talked about psychology and luck and time, but maybe the hardest financial skill is just getting the goalposts to stop moving, to decide what enough means to you and to actually be happy when you get there. That's not a math problem, it's a personal one. Where's yours?